Good morning, besties. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday. Welcome in. It's your boy, it's your old man. It is your internet astro father, Mix Mercury, the astro himbo. And welcome to Transit Chat. If you're watching this at a later time, thanks for giving me some views. I greatly appreciate it. Um, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hang out with me every Sunday where we just talk about astrology of the week and in the general sense and in the current moment and sometimes in the past and sometimes in the present. I mean, sometimes in the future. I mean, the present too, whatever. I actually have things to say today. I had a lot of downloads come through last night and this morning. I don't know how they all go together, so we're just going to have to find out together. I will likely pull some cards because we got some big transits this week. As you can tell in the title, we have both Saturn stationary retrograde, which is today, and then we have Mercury stationary retrograde, which is later this week. So lots of people in the sky, our little planet friends, are pausing, turning around to go and run that back. So today, let's get into what it is that we're going to run back. Our current sky for our Saturn retrograde moment looks like the moon is in Aquarius, freshly in Aquarius. We love to see it. Saturn is in Pisces. Venus is still in Taurus. Jupiter and the sun are still in Gemini. Mercury is in Cancer. And then Mars is still in Leo, getting very close to the South Node, if I might add. So that is the current landscape of the sky. And I have a lot of questions about it. So before I get into all that, I want to say hello to you guys. Hi to Desiree. Hello to Dr. Deb. Good morning, Adaria. Yes, good afternoon to you. Come on, downloads. Good morning to Maya. Good morning to Lo. And good morning to Paula. Hey, good to see you live. Very nice. Oh, we have a nice crowd today. Is it raining where y'all are? Because I got the flash flood warnings pouring in, pun intended, as we speak. So who knows what it's going to look like outside. It was pretty cloudy. I spent my morning just kind of hanging out. I cut up a watermelon and it was excellent. Do y'all ever? Okay, hold on. Do y'all ever cut into a watermelon? Because I'm getting better at picking them. You cut into it and it's bright red on the inside, and you just know it's gonna be delicious. And I had my first slice from one of the like middle pieces, and it was excellent. It was like it might as well have been watermelon candy. Like, do y'all ever have that experience when you're eating a fruit and it tastes exactly like oh, the rain just started, and it tastes exactly like the flavoring of that fruit. It tasted like I was eating Good Pop brand watermelon popsicles. It was excellent. So that was great. I did a little bit of yoga to stretch because I've been back in the gym, lifting and getting strong. Do you want to see a little bit of bicep action there? Yeah. So I'm thriving. I still don't have my bike back. I had it back for a moment, had to take it back to the shop. So it's going on 3.5 weeks soon. 3.5, 2.5 weeks soon. So no biking, but I've been lifting and feeling pretty good about it. So those are my updates. Let's see. Y'all are talking about no rain, but definitely some flash flood warnings. It's cloudy. Nothing but rain and thunderstorms for you. Yep. No rain here, but we need it bad. We've gotten so much rain in Texas and in Austin specifically that the lake, I believe Lake Travis, used to be about 30% full because we've been having severe droughts for the last few years. And now it's like I think they said about 71% full. Hello? 40% increase is wild. Climate change is real. And we haven't actually had a triple digit day all of June, and we haven't had one in July yet so far. Knock on wood. I hope it stays that way. But if we start getting triple digit days and this high humidity, everybody's going to be steamed vegetables. So I'm hoping that if it just keeps raining, that, the lakes fill up and whatever. I don't want any more catastrophic flooding, though. I think we've joked too much about telling the Lord to send the flood. Maybe don't send the flood. Just, punish the people who need to be punished. Anywho, yeah, let's get into this. So, I want to preface this conversation by saying I don't have like any definitive thoughts necessarily. I mostly have questions. I mostly have questions and things that I think we should all ponder on, considering retrogrades are great for reflecting and contemplating. So, some things to contemplate over the next few months. I guess I could give y'all some dates. Saturn is going to be retrograde from today until um November 28th. And it will station direct at 0 degrees Pisces, which, mind you, is the same place that Venus stationed direct earlier this year. So, and it is stationary today at 7 degrees Pisces. So, if you have any planets in mutable signs near 7 degrees, like within 3-4 degrees of 7 degrees Pisces, might feel a little itchy. It's definitely square my moon at 9 degrees Gemini. So, if that's you, how are you doing with all this in the certainty and discernment and trust slash truth department? How you doing with all that? Personal narratives, meaning making, all that. And then on Wednesday, the sun will enter Cancer. So first time that we will have the sun in Cancer since our very long Mars and Gemini retrogrades, and then also since having Mercury be the first planet in Cancer. Sun will join soon. And then by this Friday, July 18th, Saturn will station, by July 18th, this Friday, Mercury will station retrograde at 21 degrees Cancer, which is very close. No, it's not. No, nothing that I can immediately think of close to the degrees. So, there's that. And Mercury will be retrograde until looks like Mercury will station direct August 11th at 10 degrees Cancer. Now, 10 degrees Cancer is very close to where Mars stationed retrograde in Cancer, because Mars stationed retrograde at 11 degrees Cancer. So we do have some Mars retrograde themes coming back up. If you're still trying to work out what all of that meant for you, now's the time. And yeah, also dealing with things coming back up potentially from the Pisces eclipse earlier this year as well. And I would say the Virgo and Pisces eclipses from the last few years. So won't get into too much time travel with the dates and all that, but just wanted to throw that out there for people who are paying attention. Period. All right. Oh, not hungover after the memorial. Well, I'm glad you had a good time, maybe, hopefully. All right. Let's get into this. So, when we're talking about Saturn in Pisces, I still don't know what this transit means, to be honest. I think we've been talking about it as very sad memorial. Well, that justifies the drinking a little bit, I would say. But I'm very sorry to hear about the hangover and very sorry to hear about your loss as well. Um, yeah, that's tough. And during Cancer transits of all times, makes it feel a little bit louder. Okay. So I've been trying to rethink planets moving through planets, Saturn specifically moving through a sign, because I'm inclined to think about Saturn itself being the one in charge, no matter what sign that it's in. And that's not necessarily the case. Saturn is going to be answering to whatever planet rules the sign that is transiting. So in this case, this is really more about Jupiter than it is about Saturn. So Saturn's not really doing the same, restricting and limiting and holding back that it would normally do in its own Saturn ruled signs like Aquarius and Capricorn. Saturn is in a position where it has to do Jupiter ruled things. And obviously that doesn't feel very good to Saturn. Saturn's like, why would I expand? Why would I extrapolate? Why would I become obsessive and compulsive and enmeshed and engulf and consume? Like, why would I do all of those things? That's not in my nature. But Jupiter is like, well, that's what we do at my house. We take it all in. And especially when we're dealing with Pisces, Pisces will take it all in, whether they want to or not. It's just you're passively absorbing whatever it is that's going on in the context that you exist in. Typically, for water signs, we're talking about passively absorbing maybe other people's emotions, other people's feelings, other people's thoughts and opinions. One reason or another, it is a little bit boundaryless at times. You know, Saturn, I think, is a little bit more strict about boundaries and hard lines and limits, whereas Jupiter and Pisces is a little bit more of a permeable membrane, if you will. So things are passing through, things are also leaking out. Very hard to keep things contained. So I think Saturn's in a position where it is struggling to be the container that it normally is for all of these things that we are feeling and thinking and sussing out in the mutable sense. It's like there's so much information, especially with Jupiter itself being in Gemini. There's so much information coming in. There's so many thoughts that we have access to. There's so many conversations that we are listening in on for whatever reason or overhearing, whether we choose to or not. Everybody's talking, everything's loud, information flying all over the place, and there's no real container for it. So I think the struggle, the challenge, something that Saturn and Pisces natives are trying to navigate is their own limits and boundaries in terms of what they consume, yes, but just kind of what crosses your boundary, like trying to determine a limit for, at least in 2025, the information that you consume and are um affected by, maybe. Now I'm going to say that today, and then some time is going to pass, and I'm going to forget that I said that and probably say something else. But for now, I do think that is more or less what's going on. Let me know in the chat if that's something that you're feeling, and if you are a Saturn in Pisces native, if that's an experience that you're having. Just trying to figure out where you end and the rest of the world begins, and what's real and true for you versus what's real and true for other people, and how those things can exist at the same time. Hello to Jim. Yes, it is a sleepy Sunday. So that being said, I think this, hey Jada, I think this idea that like Pisces is this permeable membrane where things get in and things leak out, things are passing through, and we're dealing with Jupiter itself being in Gemini where everybody's talking. The combination of that, for whatever reason, last night I was thinking about subliminal messaging. And I know we've talked about like propaganda, for example, since we just had the Sag full moon, and we've talked about messaging through these podcasts, you know, that are really influencing the population. And I know we've also talked about with Mars and Leo transits, this idea that we are a lot more easily influenced than I think we give ourselves credit for. So the combination of all of those things and then getting to this particular, oh, and I'll even add with Venus being in Taurus too, which is really good at concealing, sometimes concealing differences, concealing what's it called? Concealing the things that would make you stand out, or the things that are not, that don't fit neatly within a norm. Venus has the ability to kind of conceal those things, especially when in Taurus. So the combination of all these things in the sky made me think about subliminal messaging in the sense that there's a lot of agendas right now, especially politically. But I think, especially when it comes to media, I think because Mercury itself is a lot of media consumption and media expression and the news and, again, podcasts and all of these different public media sources. Subliminal messaging, as in what's being communicated to us, but not necessarily being stated explicitly. So we're receiving this information within a certain context, and if you're not aware of the context in this case being fascism, authoritarianism, and the usual capitalism, whiteness, patriarchy, right? If you're not aware that these are the contexts that we exist in right now and you think that things are just, I don't know, things are just whatever, then when you're receiving messaging or symbols or whatever it is in the media that you consume, you might not be thinking very critically about it. You might not have a level of skepticism or even suspicion about the information that's being put out there. So you can be subtly influenced in these deep psychological ways by just being exposed to certain topics over and over and over and over and over again. We kind of talked about this last week, but now I'm thinking about it differently. So that's where subliminal messaging kind of came up for me last night. Just a lot of that hidden meaning. I can't say words. Hidden meaning that is imposed in media that is meant to influence you to think or feel certain ways about people. And what made me think about this is a few things. One, Love Island, well, reality TV in general, right? But specifically Love Island and Big Brother, because Big Brother just started on Thursday and Love Island is coming to a close. The internet has been ablaze with commentary on Love Island. People are talking about all of the cast members, and they are definitely 1,000,000% extrapolating all kinds of meaning and stories and diagnoses and everything else on all of these cast members just based on what they've seen, the edits that each cast member is being given. So people have their faves. We have different hives, different communities that stand behind certain cast members. And on its face, we really don't know much about cast members on reality shows, especially reality shows that do pick just regular people off the internet, influencers and whoever who aren't necessarily like celebrities or internet famous beyond maybe having a lot of followers for being attractive. That's like the type of people that they bring on Love Island. So they're not really known for anything. They're just not really known for anything in particular. But they do give a little bit of a description of who they are in the very beginning, and then you just kind of learn a little bit about who at least their representative is throughout the show, because they're obviously on camera. They're very aware that they're being filmed 24 hours, 7 days a week. So they're not being their full authentic selves for the most part, because it's just hard to do that when you're constantly being watched. Hence Mars and Leo, right? Or just Leo placements. Same thing with Big Brother. Big Brother, they introduce cast members, say where they're from, give a little bit of background on them. You don't really know too much, but they give you just enough in both of these shows and in most reality shows that you can immediately start forming judgments and make assumptions about the cast members before you even really know who they are and how they act. I caught myself doing this last night when I was at my parents' house watching the first episode of Big Brother, and I was noticing how much my commentary revolved around like what their politics probably are. And yeah, Big Brother and Love Island both have 24/7 live cameras. I was kind of I was both judging and anticipating and assuming what certain people's politics were, and also just the messaging, the subliminal messaging of why certain networks might select the cast members that they're selecting. And this is not a completely original thought and observation for me. This comes from noticing someone else talking about Love Island when it first launched, that it seemed like different networks were testing out kind of what they could get away with in terms of cast members that they bring on, and I forget how they phrased it, but it was like introducing more conservative cast members than maybe they've done in the last however many years. Like, if you think about what media was like during the Obama era, the 8 years of having an Obama presidency, everybody was woke and gay. Like, everybody was queer, everybody was black, everybody was they were just there was a little bit more color in the media. Hey, Elizabeth. And so then we get Trump season number 1, and then we get back to, Biden's election, and then how media shifted again. We got like a lot of BLM messaging, and we have a lot of conversations about immigration and just like the identities that were put into the spotlight over the last however many years of these major fixed sign transits like Jupiter and Aquarius and Saturn and Aquarius and all of these things, Scorpio and Taurus eclipses, whatever else, that we were seeing a lot more diversity in media, in reality shows and whatever, almost as if these networks are trying to make a point to kind of expose, I guess, some of the nuances of what it's like to be someone who's not a cishet white man. So I'm a person who watches like Big Brother live feeds, and I remember, especially last season and the season before of Big Brother, that people would complain about, like, there's so many more black people on here, and black people aren't even that many people in the population. So they want to only see 1 or 2 black people at a time because they feel that's more representative of the larger, broader population, when it's like, okay, weird, but okay. And then same thing with Love Island. Love Island, historically being a UK show. Yeah, Love Island had live feeds. Love Island's traditionally being a UK show, mostly was straight white people as well. But then as the years have gone on, they've invited more bisexual people on, usually women, not usually bisexual men. More people of color, whether it's black people or um, uh, Arab people or Hispanic and Latino people. Like, they've had just a little bit more diversity over the years. And then we get to this year where, Trump is making a vicious comeback, and right-wing ideologies are making a vicious comeback. And now we have like MAGA people secretly on these shows. They had both a Palestinian cast member. I think she's Palestinian American, but either way, Palestinian woman, and someone who was a former IDF soldier on Love Island come in during Casa Amor. And both of these 2 people kissed in a challenge, mind you. Very controversial. And then they've also had just some other weird things of some of the people that they've cast. And someone made the point, like I said, that they're trying to kind of, I wish I could remember how they phrased it, but the idea is like exposing us to these people again, kind of normalizing some of these ways of thinking and these different ideologies, and see if people invest in it and buy into it and identify with it, or if their ratings drop because of it. Ultimately, people like mess. So I think regardless of who's on the show, if it's messy, people will tune in. But especially whenever you add in these other subtle layers of politics, especially within, again, the context that we exist in currently, some people are consuming it with these other aspects in mind, and some people are consuming it uncritically in the way that they consume everything else. So Big Brother, I noticed the same thing, like almost immediately, and some of this could be the bias of having this idea implanted in my head, right? Me being influenced by this idea that maybe they are testing out more conservative characters, but it seems like if you've never watched Big Brother to me has been known for hiring the weirdest people you've ever met in your life. Like, for casting the weirdest people you've ever seen in your life. Like, they might have 1 or 2 kind of normie, like hunky himbo types, or prom queen type peaked in high school girls, or like whatever. They might have a couple of normie characters, but everybody else is usually fucking weird. So the fact that this season, it's like everybody that they picked was conventionally attractive to some extent, fit and athletic to some extent, and like also kind of intelligent, for lack of a better way to put it. They all just self-describe themselves as like being kind of nerdy or being intellectual in some kind of a way, strategic or whatever. So I was like, okay. And on top of all of that, it did to me seem like there were a lot more white people, but there was also a lot more Southern people. Like it seemed like everybody was from the South or from the Southeast, more or less. A lot of people from Texas, a lot of people from the Carolinas, a lot of people from some of the other Southern states. So I was just like, interesting. I wonder if they really are testing, and you can't really tell how anybody voted. The only obviously queer person that they had was a white gay man from DC, and then potentially another gay man. We think he's gay. He didn't say that he was gay, but he left the Mormon church and he just seems a little bright and shiny. He was also a cheerleader at BYU. So him too. But everybody's like tall and buff, like 6 foot, whatever. It's just is weird. So I was like, this feels uncharacteristic to me of what the show is usually like. They pick people from all walks of life usually, especially if you watch the last couple of seasons. So I just thought that was odd. And it was making me wonder how people having parasocial relationships to these people and any other like ideas that might passively come up, whether that's on the live feeds or just through people's conversation about these cast members, and then the beliefs that you start to hold about people based on the identities represented in these shows. Just lots of thoughts. So and I bring this up because this is all happening during the astrology right now, right? It's like it's happening in the container of the sky, so it's got to be relevant somehow. So those are all the things that again bring up this thought around subliminal messaging and being subtly influenced by the media that we consume. One of the themes on Big Brother as well that also shifted my thinking about the astro is one of the themes for this season is about your observational skills. And I thought that was interesting because we've talked about, again, with Gemini specifically being all of the yapping and receiving explicit communications without necessarily knowing the context that that information existed. But the Pisces aspect of it, we talk about having information withheld from you, having to read into things, and things not being explicitly communicated or information being left out or omitted. So then that is where observation would come in. You would have to pay a little bit more attention to things that aren't being spoken, things that aren't being said out loud, things that aren't being verbalized in order to understand a little bit more about the context, or rather to rely more on context to fill in the gaps, but also to draw conclusions about the situation that you're witnessing, knowing that you might not ever know the full truth of what's going on. So, needing some level of skepticism for all of the media that we consume right now, but also just moving through life. Like, it feels like there is a need for skepticism because you can't just believe the first thing that you hear or the first thing that you see. There's too many, I don't know, things out there that could manipulate your perception of things like AI, for example. Uh and the mass media machine and all of those other things. Needing some level of skepticism to constantly question and also to hopefully to critique things again instead of taking at face value. Now, one of my predictions, if you will, is that if people aren't very critical now, they will become very critical whenever Mars enters Virgo at the end of this month. Like, I think Mars and Leo has a little bit of this, like Mars and Leo, especially when combined with Cancer transits, and we've got Venus and Taurus right now too, has a little bit of this starstruck quality to it where you're so captivated or mesmerized by the thing that you're witnessing that sometimes it's hard to think critically about it because you're too busy projecting onto it, whether that's projecting onto it in a negative sense or in a positive sense. But there's some aspect of like self that you are taking within you or that you don't acknowledge in yourself that you're putting on this thing and making it bigger than what it actually is. instead of taking it at face value. So even that has a little bit of an uncritical lens. A good example of this is Beyonce. We always talk about Beyonce. She's just such a good example as somebody who has the sun in Leo, of somebody who people are easily captivated and mesmerized by, but may not always think or consume her artistry critically, or just even her as a person critically. Very easy to be blinded by the lights and the performance of it all. And sometimes same thing with all of these reality show TV people, right? Whatever behaviors they're exhibiting, if it strikes a chord in you in a way that you want to be perceived, or a way that you think people should be acting, uh it becomes an uncritical, I won't even say uncritical, but it becomes, it's different. That criticism to me is like, criticism in the Virgo sense to me is literally like thinking critically about something, or like a food critic is going to go to a restaurant and they're not necessarily going to give a negative review, but they are going to really scrutinize the food, the atmosphere, the experience that they're having, and then go and tell other people about the experience that they were having. You know, I was looking up new earbuds the other day, trying to figure out which ones to get within a certain range of boundaries, like a budget and some of the other things that I was looking for in a daily driver earbud. So I'm going and reading reviews and reading what other people have said with their critical opinions of the thing, of the earbuds, whether that's loving the sound quality but maybe not liking the fit, um loving the amount of bass, but maybe some types of earbuds sound too kicky, whereas some of them have a little bit smoother sound that doesn't muddy the rest of the sound, right? There's all this information you can add in that sometimes is contrasting or contradictory or nuanced, but that's the whole point of being critical, is that you are analyzing these finer details versus just a big broad stroke opinion of a thing that lacks variety and detail. So I think when I say people potentially being a little bit uncritical now, it's probably because a lot of us are in this observational state where we're kind of just looking at a thing, and whether or not you are investigating further, you hold that skepticism and you're reading into it, maybe depends on other things in your chart, or depends on the specific content, person, experience, whatever it is that you're having. Um, okay, I'm gonna pause there and see what y'all are saying, because I don't want to get too far away before I change the subject. Speaking of this retrograde, I realized that when Saturn went into Pisces, the CDC stopped posting on Instagram and only retweeting RFK on Twitter. So I'm curious what this retrograde will do with that. Ew, I didn't know that that was happening. But yeah, that is a good example. The CDC and just in general, this administration has removed a lot of public health information. So people who are not particularly thinking critically about what that means are still in there. I'm going to trust the public health officials instead of what random people on Twitter were saying. I had someone in my DMs recently, in my mentions recently, saying that same thing. Not thinking critically about the larger context of, hey, have you considered that maybe this government doesn't want you to know things? And so they're removing information left and right so you can stop forming opinions and thoughts. Something to consider. They're not actually communicating everything to you that you would normally expect a functioning government to do. So relying on public health officials whenever the public health officials are conspiracy theorists and grifters, probably not the wisest thing to do, right? So yes, also a great example. Jada has Saturn in Pisces. Godspeed to you. Desiree also has Saturn in Pisces, opposite the Sun in Virgo. Ooh, yes. I feel like I am constantly navigating, having to discern my own truth versus others' truths. Absolutely, absolutely. Natal Saturn in Pisces retrograde, so I'm just chilling right now. Okay, feels a little familiar for you. And then Jim asking the same question I asked: how are the Saturn in Pisces folks experiencing their Saturn return so far? I know some Saturn and Pisces people I know personally are having a little bit of that things keep happening uh phase that one has during their Saturn return, but I have noticed a lot of others are doing okay And then there's just moments, I think now with Cancer transits coming in to reinforce the whole water sign thing, the feelings coming up, which is what I'll get into next, the feelings coming up, um, and the story that we tell ourselves about our feelings, or just what we think our feelings are telling us about a situation, is definitely in the room with us. The Love Island commentary is, I wonder what it is about this specific season that everyone is so deeply attached to these people. I really think it's because there's the way the sky is set up right now, like it just feels like easier to get attached or enmeshed with someone who you are projecting narratives onto. Like that just is so Pisces to me. There's and this is no shade whatsoever, but it's just part of attachment sometimes is you make it's a little bit of the Pisces and the Leo at the same time, in my opinion, where you see someone behaving in a way that you identify with, or you see someone behaving in a way that you don't identify with. You're going to have strong feelings about that. And depending on which side of the aisle you fall on, whether you agree with it, disagree with it, you feel kind of lukewarm, the more intense feelings you have about an experience you're having, the more you kind of latch on to that experience. Does that make sense? It's like Huda, for example, is someone who drives me nuts. Like I just every time she's doing a thing, I'm like, girl. And for the most part, I have compassion for her just in the sense that she's young. She's young and she's doing relationship stuff. She's young, she's been through things, her country is going through things, and um every little thing that she does is on blast for the world to see. Like I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy cuz it just seems miserable. So, even though I don't like it, I don't feel any particular type of strong judgment or attachment to her other than the fact that when she's on screen, I'm cringing. Parts of me is cringing because I recognize there have been times where I've been like that. And I'm like, ew. There have been times I've been like that and feel some shame around it, right? That shame word always comes up when we're talking about fixed signs. But then there's also the parts of me that have not acted like that, that are like, I would never want to act like that and be seen acting like that. And so even though I wouldn't consider myself like a fan of hers, I still have a particular amount of focus and energy towards her, even if it's in the negative, um because it elicits so much feeling. And so that's another way when we talk about this idea of like emotional manipulation, it's not necessarily always an intentional thing. It's just the fact that your feelings dictate your perception about things a lot. And I think we kind of take that for granted sometimes. So yeah, it's a bunch of different things for a lot of people. And I also think part of it is like when Leo transits are going on and people are doing stuff, it's easier to focus on them than it is to focus on yourself. And it's also nice to escape into a reality that doesn't exist than it is to acknowledge the crisis, the ongoing crises, both at home and around the world. But I do think in general that's just reality TV. Like regardless of what's going on in the sky, to some extent, people will form parasocial relationships with people who are visible to them because and I'll also add another piece of it, not to stay on this point too long, but I think all of these things are relevant to the larger conversation, is that when you are on social media or whatever it is, we go back to this whole thing of subliminal messaging and being influenced, and Venus being in Taurus right now, when everybody is talking about a show and it seems like everyone is, for lack of a better way to put it, bonding over this show, it gives you that sense of belonging and community and rapport with other people that, you know, we've otherwise been very divisive over a lot of other things and feeling like we don't trust and feel unsafe towards each other. So if all of these people can basically be scapegoats or stand-ins for our political, moral, and other social beliefs, then if you identify with a certain person or disidentify with a certain person and you find other people who also feel that way, that gives you a sense of safety and belonging and sanity. That's like, oh, okay, this behavior that I'm perceiving as good or bad must actually be good or bad because look, all these other people agree with me. So I think this is also part of the current moment, but just why people get like this about reality TV shows. Especially, again, the closer you identify with the people on screen, whether it's by age, by gender, sexuality, whatever, insert identity thing, class, this and that, because they share some part of your perspective that sometimes they give language to that you maybe don't have language to. So I do think this is people's way of bonding during crisis. And it's hard to resist. Sometimes it's not hard for me. Like, sometimes I'm the opposite. If everybody is on the bandwagon about a thing, I don't want to be on the bandwagon, even if it's a good thing. Like, I still haven't seen Sinners. And I wanted to see Sinners originally whenever it came out, when people very first started talking about it, or at least people close to me started talking about it, saying that it was fantastic. But whenever it became like the only thing people were talking about on the timeline, I was just like, oh, okay, blah. I will watch it on my own time, because I didn't want to be influenced by everybody else's thoughts and feelings about it. I wanted to have my own experience with the film and the content, which I still haven't done because it still comes up. So it's weird, but that's not for me to say that I'm special and different, but it just my Venus personally is like, I don't want to be like everybody else. I don't want to be like everybody else. I don't want to think how everybody else thinks. And I kind of felt the same way about Love Island. Like, it sort of killed the mood for me a little bit that everyone was talking about it to the extent that they've been talking about it, because now I'm like, now I don't know how I feel about any of these things. Like, do I just feel this way because everybody else has said this and the power of suggestion is getting to me, or do I actually, like, am I actually seeing what I see and having my feelings about it? Because there was a lot of stuff that people were saying about Love Island that I was like, y'all are reaching to the fucking moon with that analysis. Like, bring it back. And that's where I think, again, people project their own stories and values, and even some aspect of it being like a fabricated scenario. Like, there's never going to be a situation in real life where you and 12 other people you've never met are secluded on an island cut off from the rest of the world in Fiji with cameras following you everywhere, and that you're going to have a normal experience. You're just not. So all of it kind of has this fantasy element to it, where it is inviting you to talk about it and project stuff into it, which is fine in and of itself. But then people take it too fucking far, and that actually kind of leads into the next thing I wanted to talk about with all of this, but I want to read y'all's replies first before I change the subject. Giving good critique also requires knowledge and mastery of the components. You have to be a student of a thing to critique. That is so true. Very, very true. You do have to be a little bit knowledgeable and informed, well informed, to have, I won't say a valid critique necessarily, but to have the insight that it would take to notice certain things. We're going back to, again, this thing about observations. I could talk all day about, like, astrology is a good example of this. Is astrology a good example of this? I think I'll stick to my headphones example, because I learned a lot through reading like official reviews from people who study the shit, and then from consumer reviews of people who have just tried the product and maybe don't have the awareness. And this actually might be related to the whole Saturn and Pisces thing too, because Saturn itself is about ignorance, right? The things that you just don't know because you just don't know. Why would you know if you've never been told or exposed to it? Um, with learning about earbuds, I actually just learned more about headphones in general, different types of headphones that existed that I didn't even know existed. I didn't know that there was a such thing as open back, I think, earphones and headphones. It might just be headphones, maybe not earphones. Open back headphones that allow you to get this experience of what you would get being in a room surrounded by speakers, but instead of being in a room surrounded by speakers, you just have headphones on your head. Whereas closed back headphones give you more of the sound is coming from inside your head thing, and earbuds even more so, because of them literally being in your ear canals and also having active noise canceling. There's a way that it makes the sound feel like it's coming from inside your head, and it feels more intimate, yes, and a little bit thicker to me, but less open. And then, if you're in your car listening to music, or like I said, in a room full of speakers, or apparently with open back headphones on, you get this wider experience because different parts of your ear are able to basically deal with the way the sound waves are coming in. What? I was like, that's wild. I would have never thought about that. It seems so simple now that I'm aware of it, but then that gives you a whole other way of critiquing sound and music that I just wouldn't have considered before. Cause I'm over here thinking, like, what would be the purpose of an open back headphone? Other people can hear your music. I thought the whole point of headphones is so other people don't hear your music. No, there's another way that you can experience sound that you didn't even know about. Same thing with in-ear monitors for stage performers. You can you can have in-ear monitors, which are basically like earbuds that are super duper noise canceling, but they allow you to play on stage with other band members to hear yourself and whatever it is that you're doing a little bit more clearly without having to compete with the sound of everything else going on the stage. And a lot of in-ear monitors that especially like music producers use have a bunch of different, they call them drivers, but like speakers in the headphones to pick up all of the different sounds all at once so that you get like a more diverse and rich and nuanced sounding headphone than just like our basic single driver speakers that are trying to get all of the sound out at once. I was just like, what? So many things I didn't even know about. So I'm over here thinking like you would critique headphones based on XYZ things and then learning that there's actually so much more that I didn't even know about. So yeah, um, there's that. The audio example, me whenever looking for ear protection to wear for a show that I worked last night. Shout out to Reddit for show concert workers and their insight. Yes, exactly. The experience of over ear versus in ear is way more different than I expected. Also, that, yes, sounds like it would be amazing with 5D audio. Yes, see, you're getting it. You're getting it. Like, who would have even thought about all that? That's why, like, audio and sound engineers, whenever it comes to production of any kind, is so important, whether it's theater or concerts or studio recording or whatever. Like, audio engineering is a whole field in and of its own that someone could look into, and you just learn so many different things that would then make you aware of certain aspects of a product or an experience that other people wouldn't be aware of. So there's that thing again of when you're privy to certain information, or whenever you have your lens pointed in a particular direction of something that maybe other people aren't perceiving, it gives you a unique perspective and critique on a thing that maybe other people aren't thinking about and aren't considering, and they just think that you're doing too much. And it's like, no, no, no. It actually just turns out that there's more going on here than maybe you're aware of. And I feel like y'all know where I'm going with this because a lot of y'all are critical thinkers too. Otherwise, you wouldn't be into astrology. But yeah, this is perfect for kind of setting up the rest of this conversation. Okay. Da, da, da. Didn't realize Big Brother has 24 cameras like that. Yes, they do. Um do, do, do. Oh, they removed the bird flu emergency too. That's definitely something everybody stopped talking about. Kind of alarming because we really don't know if it went away or if it's getting worse. We don't know what's going on at all. Ah. The feelings are loud. Very true. I could tell this was coming when Venus was in Aries. So real. I haven't seen it either because I'm a single mom. Okay. All right. I will watch shit 5 years later out of spite and forgetfulness. That is literally me. So many things that are like staple pop culture movies that I am like, I've never seen it. And then I randomly decide to watch and I'm like, wow, that was fantastic. And I like that I can say it was fantastic without the influence of everybody else saying it was fantastic. Or on the contrary, watching something that everyone else thought was terrible and being like, no, you guys just don't get it. Like, okay. So moving forward, next part of the conversation is a little bit more about Mercury retrograde in conjunction with Saturn stationary retrograde. Okay. So usually whenever I talk about Cancer transits, something that I've thought about over the last few years, especially since Saturn was in Capricorn, is consumerism. Consumerism and Cancer transits to me go together like this, because Cancer is so much of also consuming things for pleasure and joy and for an embodied experience of something, right? It can be um about your basic needs in terms of food and water and shelter and whatever else, or it can be the numbing aspect of not wanting to feel bad, so you do these other things to feel good. And it's very much about the immediacy of the pleasure that you receive from getting something that you have a craving for or a desire for, and it's also about the sometimes the impulsivity of following through with a craving or a desire as well. Sometimes I think that can be like an Aries or Mars Cancer combo, but generally speaking, Cancer is the baby. Cancer is the baby. Sometimes it's the mommy. And when it cries, like Cancer is like, if I say jump, you say how high and you quickly, or I'm going to ruin your day, your mood. It's the feeling of being hangry and lashing out on everybody around you till you get some food and then coming back around and saying, you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm not me when I'm hungry. Snickers ad, nailed the nail on the hammer. Nailed it on the head with that ad. Yeah, it's the experience of the disruption that comes from having a need. And with consumerism specifically, consumerism is our way of coping with capitalism. It's really ironic, right? Like capitalism exists to endlessly produce shit, to constantly expand and grow and produce and produce and produce, and to make money off of all the things that you are producing into infinity and beyond, and to also create a desire for people to consume that thing that you're producing. Otherwise, you won't make any money. So it doesn't really matter if people actually need it or not. What matters is if they want it. What matters is if they crave it, if they desire it. If you can entice them by manufacturing a need, then you can control the market and thus you can control capitalism, more or less. Not control capitalism, but you can participate in capitalism in a way that you can capitalize on it, that it becomes advantageous to you, and produces and makes you rich, right? That's the whole goal. And then for people who have way more money and power than any of us, it's about maintaining power and control over a population in order to get them to continue to produce the thing that you're also trying to get everybody to consume. So if you are the person with all the power and control, because remember, Cancer as a cardinal placement is about power and control, then you have the ability to, again, emotionally manipulate a whole population of people by, one, getting them to work for you in order to produce endlessly, and for people themselves to become capital, which is gross and disgusting, but what's going on. And then the way that we as workers, as laborers, cope with the excessive amount of work and labor that we're doing in order to produce all this shit is to buy it. If I'm going to make all this money, I got to spend it on something. Otherwise, what was the point of anything? What was the point of me laboring 40 hours a week if I can't buy things that I want and need? And this is what's wild about this for me, as someone with Cancer in the second house, meaning that is my money house, and someone who also has eighth house placements and all these other things in my chart, right? Like the way that I grew up as a Capricorn with no Cancer and no Taurus was that you have to work for things that you want. You can't just have things handed to you. You have to earn and labor and toil, and if you didn't earn and labor and toil for it, then it's probably not worth it, or something about that process is going to make it more worth it. There's like a lot of withholding that happens. That's like, if it's not an actual material necessity, then I can't justify spending money on something just for pleasure or just to feed the impulse demon, the treat the right demon, right? Like, I just didn't grow up with that mindset. I grew up with the save money, over a long period of time and make sure that you have material security for the long run versus feeding into shorter term desires, right? So, especially during the last 5 years where I wasn't well, I there until now I haven't really been employed in a way that was like meeting my needs in terms of, being able to pay rent and bills and everything else and have disposable income. So I'll say that I haven't really had disposable income in a secure way where I'm not financially depending on my parents until now. And so there's been a lot of having the experience of poverty, right? Like having the experience of just scraping by every month and then also having to throw sometimes needs and also any excess spending on a credit card and just like pay it off over time. And then now you're in bondage with the bank. um, so having that experience over the last several years really shaped my politics because like it's so cruel to be in survival mode for basic needs and to be working a lot and still not make enough. Like nothing will make you anti-capitalist faster than that. And many of you know this because you've been here with me along for the ride. But now that I have more stable income, I've noticed how easy it is to just slip into the consumerism of it all. And I'm like, I reckon with that shit every single day because on the one hand, I still struggle to know what's an appropriate amount to spend on basic needs. Like to spend money in general, I just like it feels like such a whole thing of like, do I really need this? Or like, also where is my money going? And then there's no ethical consumption, but also am I just getting this to numb? Am I just doing this to da 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 da? All of these products are so wasteful. This industry is so wasteful. Like there's just so many things that come up that some days it's even hard to just buy money to or buy money, just to buy food to feed myself, even though I'm literally sitting here hungry. Like, so it just, I bring all of that up to say the consumerism as a way to cope with capitalism and to cope with the powerlessness is something that seems to come up every single Cancer transit. And so now that we have this Mercury retrograde in Cancer coming up after we just had a Mars retrograde between Gemini and Cancer, and um after a lot of the other Cancer retrogrades like Venus in Cancer that we had a couple years ago, and then the experience of Cancer oppositions to Saturn in Capricorn the last few years. It just seems more and more, excuse me, more and more obvious that um, consumerism is a demon that all of us are battling to some extent. So, how does this fit with all the stuff we were talking about earlier with um, reality shows and critical thinking and subliminal messaging and all of these other things? The first thing I wanted to talk about was uncritical consumption versus critical consumption. Because at some point in this retrograde, I feel like that's going to come up, especially once Mars enters Virgo. Because we're talking about Mercury, um, and then critical consumption again because Mercury rules Jupiter. Mercury in Cancer rules Jupiter and Gemini during this retrograde, and then bringing us back to Pisces. So critical and uncritical consumption. Part of my question, because I don't have the answer to this, but I want to talk through it out loud. Part of my question is what circumstances necessitate the need for critical consumption? Is it all circumstances because of the systems that we exist in? Or are there moments where maybe it's okay to uncritically consume something? And to bring this into like a real example, going back to reality shows, Love Island. We talked about the cast members and their politics and maybe things that they do and don't stand for in the real world or behaviors that they do and don't have in the real world. And we're speculating a lot of that, speculating being another Pisces word, speculating a lot about these people based on what we're being shown by yes, they're real behaviors that they're obviously doing on camera, but also the manipulation of the production team who is editing these characters to look a certain way to us. Well, really editing them into characters, distorting their image basically that we are then consuming. All of that in itself is marketing. All of that in itself is subliminal messaging. All of that in itself is trying to tell us a story that may or may not be the truth of who those people actually are. So when we talk about critically consuming versus uncritically consuming, that's where my question is like, if you're watching a reality show and you know, as the well-informed, politically active people that you are, you know that you're watching a show. You're consenting to being entertained by this show. How much then do you allow yourself to invest in these characters versus as people in the real world? And like, what is the boundary for you while you're watching? Is it just like, I'm watching this character that exists within this ecosystem of this show? Or am I really invested in this person as a person in the real world? Do y'all get what I'm saying? Because the thing it brings up for me is the whole separating the art from the artist question as well. Like, if you are listening to a song and not considering the artist who created the song in the context in which they created that song, I guess what are the points that it becomes necessary to I don't even know if the question is like if it becomes necessary, but it's like, what is the thing that takes our enjoyment and experience of something to then become, I guess, a statement about us and our politics, or a statement about the person on the other side of the experience? Like, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the question is I was trying to ask, and I knew I wouldn't know exactly what the question is, but I think what I wrote down actually was enjoying or consuming something within its proper context, specifically talking about media because it's a good example, but really anything. Like, what does it actually look like to enjoy or to consume something within its proper context? And I think the reason I'm asking the question is because it's around enjoyment and pleasure and feeling good, you know? Uh when we talk about consuming things as a form of escape or consuming things as a way to ignore the bigger picture, like obviously that's worthy of critique. What are situations where that exists versus watching something for enjoyment, especially like a reality show, and being able to separate the version that's being sold to you as a story or as a commodity versus like the real lives that these people live outside of this. And this question came up because, a lot of people got removed from Love Island this year, probably more than what's happened in the past. It's not a new thing for that to happen on reality shows, but it is interesting how much it happened in this year. And I kind of felt weird about it because one of the girls, Sierra, she was one of the last people to just suddenly get removed. People went and found some old posts. And this is kind of getting into cancel culture stuff, right? Whatever cancel culture is, I think fits actually really good into this conversation. People went and found old posts of her using the C slur that people usually use towards East Asian people, talking about the shape of her eyes and whatever, and like wanting to get it surgically fixed. And apparently this is a huge thing in some East Asian cultures where if they want to look more Western, they go and they get this surgery to give you basically the double eyelid thing that a lot of us have, to change the shape and look of your eyes to appear more Western. And it's a whole thing, very similar to whenever we talk about Black people in like skin bleaching, or lighter skinned people trying to be white passing. It's like it falls in the same line as that. And I guess she had used this word in the past, sometime long ago, posted about it. People dug up those old posts. And many people didn't know that she had already like taken accountability for that and apologized through her personal relationships at that time. But now that she's on this show, of course, you got all these weirdos who go and they deep dive through all of her stuff to find something bad about her to serve whatever their own agenda is and blast it all over social media saying like, oh, she was using this slur like all these years ago. She's racist. She's this, she's that, like just totally mischaracterizing and painting this whole picture of her for something that she did years ago and applying that to the person that she is today and saying that that's grounds for her being removed from the show. Now, mind you, I did start this out by saying that like, yeah, some of these production companies are trying to test out how more conservative or potentially even bigoted or racist or whoever these different types of people, these characters would be received by a larger audience. And so I think it's interesting that do I think it's interesting? I don't know, but I start to wonder if that made sense to do in the context of this show. Hey, Samaje. I was just wondering if that was an overreaction. Was that appropriate? Did it fit? Did it fit? I don't know. So I'll tell you my thought process about all of this is like she was being, as far as I can tell, pretty neutral on the show. You know, she wasn't like, or maybe she was and I missed it. So grain of salt. But from what I could tell, she wasn't behaving in a controversial way on the show other than having sex with that guy in the room full of people. But otherwise, she was just some girl on the show. So I'm a person who believes in natural consequences, especially if I'm someone who wants to strive towards more abolitionist ideals versus carceral punishments, which a lot of us are kind of indoctrinated into. So to me, I'm like, if she's not being racist on the show, if she's not using the slur on the show, if she's not like displaying any of those behaviors on the show, then to me, that doesn't mean she's being rewarded for any of those behaviors if she's not doing them and still being on the show and like getting all the clout and potentially winning the money at the end. Like those things kind of don't exist in the same space. Because to me, like if she's on the show being harmful towards groups of people, then yeah, absolutely she needs to be removed from the show because we don't want to reward that type of behavior by letting them stay on and continue to be problematic in a way that millions of people can view. But if you are a person on the internet and you go into her personal life and her old posts, emphasis on old posts from another time in her life, and dig all that up and use that as grounds to remove her from the show, why does that feel like a good punishment? Like why would those two things go together? And I say this coming from the space of like when people talk about parenting and how to discipline your child, you know, there's hitting them, which is not congruent with the offense that you're trying to punish them for or discipline them for or whatever. And then there's doing things like your kid, you know, doesn't do the dishes, you take away their phone. And it's like that's not necessarily a natural consequence of not doing the dishes either. The natural consequence of not doing the dishes is you have a sink full of dishes and now you don't have any clean dishes to eat off of. So it makes sense then to reinforce behavior by doing the dishes because you know the consequence of not doing the dishes is you don't have any clean dishes. Same thing with laundry. If you go without doing your laundry for weeks and weeks and weeks and you run out of clothes, you either going to have to wear stinky clothes and then people are going to make fun of you or you need to do your laundry and fold your clothes, you know? So there's that. Those are very rudimentary examples, but just to kind of show where I'm coming from. If she's not being problematic on the show, why does it make sense to remove her for something that she did ages ago that was not even related to Love Island? That's my question. Right? Because to me, I wouldn't perceive that as Love Island promoting bad behavior. Her doing that had nothing to do with her time on Love Island. So that's just kind of weird to me. Um, so that's where again I'm like, But then on the other hand, you have the context of Huda being someone who is a Palestinian American, and then you're inviting in a former IDF soldier, or at the very least a Zionist, onto the show. And again, this is another situation where neither of these people are talking about their politics, because I think you're not allowed to talk about politics really on the show, but neither of these people are talking about their politics. They're not talking about their backgrounds. They're not trying to share their beliefs with each other on the show or to influence any of us to believe anything explicitly. But then if you know the context of both of their backgrounds and you see both of them making out unknowingly with each other on the show, that's kind of fucked up. But the responsibility then is on production to do their homework, right? So it's weird for us to it would then be weird for us to sit back if we have that knowledge to watch this go on and nothing be done about it, because we know both of these people are going to find out about it later, and that might be kind of problematic or unsafe, or who knows. But it's weird, right? So these are the questions that I have where I'm like, if we're talking about no ethical consumption and we're talking about the things that we all to some extent willingly consume on a daily basis, knowing that it's harmful. I'm talking about earbuds, and knowing that a lot of the components for earbuds and our phones and everything else are contributing to genocides in Sudan. Like, you know, uncritical versus critical consumption and enjoying things within their proper context. That's my question. Because I don't know. I don't know the answer. Sometimes I feel like, using myself as an example again, watching Big Brother and seeing them introduce all the cast and like having all of these critical opinions of the cast members that aren't really related to what they're there to do on Big Brother specifically yet. Because at some point in Big Brother, people's personal biases do influence how they play the game. Like, that is kind of part of the whole game. Then yeah, to some extent they would be promoting certain behaviors, and then me, by watching it, am I also promoting those behaviors? And by me watching it, am I also how much am I being influenced subliminally by what's going on in this show, right? Even if I don't believe it's okay to manipulate and backstab people, if I'm watching people do it for a whole season, like if I'm watching uncritically and I'm thinking that the most devious, is that the word? Yeah, the most devious player eventually win $750,000 because they betrayed and um backstabbed every person to the bitter end of the show, and they get rewarded for that. Like, and I'm gonna be like, well, it's just a game. That's how the game is supposed to be played. Yikes, right? Because it is a larger metaphor for, again, capitalism. Like, yeah, the person who can move their way to the top eventually wins. I mean, we literally are watching that happen with this administration. There's a bunch of people who grifted their way all the way to the top, lying and gaslighting and backstabbing and manipulating people all the way there. Some of us probably contributed to that by watching The Apprentice several years ago, right? Like, I don't know. It makes me wonder how this will come up for us in our personal lives, as far as ways that we might be doing subtle or subliminal manipulations of each other by the things we do and don't say, and the things we do and don't consume or share in together, and the conversations that we have. And I don't know. Because another thing that I heard today on a different podcast I was watching. It was one of my lesbian podcasts where they were talking about lesbians having a rough Pride Month. And, they talked about the same thing we talked about as far as people like JoJo Siwa and Fletcher and Billie Eilish, like all come out dating men, despite how they might have previously identified. And how a lot of people's complaint is that these stars capitalized on their queerness, and that these audiences got invested in them because of their queerness, or specifically because of their sapphicness, if that's a word. And then all of these creators, who are people who are in this position, are saying like, hey, it's kind of tricky and nuanced to say that someone can capitalize off of being queer. One, because being queer is not very lucrative in this society, as much as like you can build an audience off of being queer, you can build an audience off of being a lesbian, whatever, marketing in a way that puts your sexuality forward. They were saying that a lot of times you get like a quick bump in the beginning because people identify with you and they see you and they resonate with your stuff. But there's also a lot of queer people who mostly consume queer media at first because they are just coming out and wanting to feel seen or wanting to feel valid or whatever. And then eventually they drop off whenever they become more secure in their identity and they move on. But whenever it comes to the actual capitalism of it all, it's very hard to get brand deals. It's very hard to get paid properly. It's hard to get monetized on YouTube. Like there's a lot of different ways that being queer actually works against you. So then to say that people are capitalizing off of queerness, when in reality that may not actually be what's happening, like that's one side of the story. And then the other side of the story is when it comes to branding yourself and turning yourself into a product, you do become something that people consume. And again, circling back to this whole thing of consumerism and control and power and all power dynamics and all this stuff, like we always talk about how people feel a sense of entitlement to artists as a product versus artists as people who create a thing that you consume, that you enjoy. And you're meant to consume and enjoy the thing and not necessarily the person, not necessarily the artist themselves as a person. So there's another blurry line between, again, the art and the artist, or the character and the actor as a person, and just all of these different things, where again, the question of what does it look like to enjoy or consume something within the context, within its proper context. Because to me, it's starting to seem like, because of all of the parasocial relationships that we're gaining with each other, with artists, with reality TV shows, stars and actors and whoever else, like the parasocial relationships that we're getting with these people, they're not real. Like that's not a reciprocal relationship, you know? And the more parasocial you become, the harder it is to have that healthy skepticism and critique of not just the art, but of the artists themselves, right? Because now you have this attachment, this emotional attachment to the art, that you're projecting aspects of yourself onto in your life experiences that you resonate with onto this piece of art, but then onto the artist, because the artist created the art. And so clearly this artist must have something in common with me. The person who created this product must have something in common with me to know that I would like this thing that they've produced, or to know that I would I would share this experience or whatever. Like there's just this weird blurring of lines thing that happens that then turns the whole experience into something that we like can control. And once you have control over it, you can determine its success. And maybe what I'm getting at is that I feel like we use that power for the wrong thing. Because why are we using that power to take some girl off of Love Island when we could be using that same power to actually disrupt the systems that we exist in? To like take down politicians, Like, do we not have the power to do that in situations where it would actually make a difference in our lives? Or do we not have the power and so then we use it for other things like reality TV shows and celebrities because they feel like they're the closest thing to us to reach and to quench that thirst of wanting justice for our circumstances. Because that was the other thing I wanted to talk about if I didn't just lose it. Um, Grasping for power and control, enjoying something in its proper context. Um, I lost it. It'll come back. Let me see what y'all are saying in the chat. I think production could have handled it better because aren't there other contestants who were worse in their recent social media activity? Yeah. I mean, and everyone, I think, probably has some point where they said something out loud that they probably didn't need to say out loud, but you were a teenager and you're thinking about the consequences of your actions. Part of your brain was not totally online yet. So sometimes I just feel like if it's not like a pattern that's continued into adulthood, I don't really see the value in digging up people's old shit from whenever they were kids. Because as much as we don't like to acknowledge this, like a lot of kids do go through their period of basically what I'll call living the indoctrination of whiteness, capitalism, and patriarchy, where they say shitty things about other people because they're not thinking about the long-term consequences or the long-term implications of those thoughts and behaviors. Because again, the subliminal messaging that's everywhere. All of us have something to decolonize. All of us have something to root out within ourselves that got imposed onto us just by nature of being Americans. You know, we come back to this conversation about us, our identity as Americans, as people in the heart of the empire, where we all have some level of all of these isms to unpack that we've internalized unconsciously or subconsciously through the subliminal messaging of our of existing in this country, where we're constantly being sold something, we're constantly being marketed to, we're constantly consuming ads, we're constantly hearing messages about our appearance and our weight and our diets and our class positions and the cars that we drive and the TV shows that we watch and the TV that you watch it on and the house that you live in. Like, we're constantly being given messages about everything all the time, which I think is my point of this entire live is with Saturn stationing retrograde, is like we're constantly being fed narratives unconsciously, or rather we're constantly receiving um narratives unconsciously, and some of them do seep in whether we want them to or not, because you repeat it enough times, it becomes significant in your brain, and it's really hard to root that out, because usually the reason it got into your brain is the first place is that they were weaponizing your other faculties like fear or disgust or shame or um uncertainty or whatever it is to like make it really stick with you, same ways that religions do, using things like hell and eternal damnation to manipulate your behavior. So, that's a little bit off track, but so it doesn't make sense to me to bring up people's old shit when people have probably learned and grown since then. Now, if they're still behaving that way today and you can find something within the last year or so, and maybe even a year is a lot, but in the last 6 months or so, then like yeah, there's probably a reason to believe that that person still behaves and thinks that way. But at some point it's like, okay, we're keeping people pigeonholed in these like old versions of themselves, never allowing them to grow and evolve and to make up for their past mistakes or whatever. We're keeping people in these boxes of like people to be feared, people to be shamed, people to be cast out. And that's not very restorative either. It's not really going to help us as a society learn to trust each other and learn to repair relationships and to move forward in healthy and constructive ways, if we keep people if we keep using people's past against them, basically. And then on that same topic, if we're going to use anyone's past against them, it should be the people running the country, right? Not people whose whole existence really is to entertain us. Like, we can let that go. In my opinion, we can let a lot of that stuff go because it's all distracting from people we should actually be focused on, like people who are on the fucking Epstein logs. And now we're just going to sit here and accept that Trump and company have decided that, oh, the Epstein logs aren't actually important. We don't need to worry about that. That was years ago. Or when it comes to Diddy or Jay-Z, like, or Nicki Minaj's husband or whoever it is, like, if he did molest that girl, that was years ago. That was one girl, whatever. Like, maybe those aren't behaviors we should be excusing. Maybe those are behaviors we should be paying attention to, because these are people. I mean, I'm talking about, I added celebrities into that, but I'm mostly talking about our literal politicians and people who are making decisions on our behalf, who don't actually represent us and who do have patterns of behavior. Because I think that's really the thing that it comes down to. Is this a consistent pattern of behavior that we've observed and noticed over time, that we're allowing people to get away with certain things? Or was this like a one-off situation or something in the past that this person hasn't done in their big age? But why are we focused more on people who don't? And I'll say this, like, yes, there is social influence that I think matters in terms of people who do have a voice and a platform and visibility, and who do influence the way people think about other people. But then there's politicians and people with actual power who we keep giving power to, even passively, that actually should be critiqued and taken off the pedestal and taken out of power and taken and cast out, you know? So I don't know. Oh, my abs. Yeah, these are my questions. And maybe these transits, because this Mercury retrograde and the Mars retrograde, like I said, are all setups for Jupiter and Cancer, which happens as early as this fall, but then continues again next year for the longer version of this transit. And I think that really is going to be a lot of this, like, uncritical consumption, critical consumption, reaching for control in areas that make us feel like we have power but aren't actually the areas that we need to regain power. That was the other thing I was going to say, was on this theme of uncritical consumption and subliminal messaging and everything else. It's Matu Gwendolyn on Instagram and TikTok and everywhere else that she is, they are pronouns. If y'all guys can remember, tell me in the chat, but I'm going to use they in the meantime. They made a wonderful post recently that talked about the panic paradox, I believe is what they called it. And I clocked this shit too. So I was so glad to see somebody else talking about it, because I had tweeted on Twitter a few days ago as well, saying that it seems like the more unstable things get, the more people end up clinging into capitalism. And that a lot of that is by design, because so much fear has been instilled in us, and just so much of this narrative that, like, things are never going to change has been instilled into us, that the more things are the more unstable and unpredictable things become, the more we latch onto things that are familiar and predictable, even if we know it's hurting us. And this is something that people just do in general. But on the systemic level, which is what Ismatu was talking about, was the panic paradox of something breaks or is broken systemically, like what the current administration is doing with all of our social services, breaking all of those in real time. And then we all panic about the fact that this social service or whatever it is breaking in real time, and everybody's freaking out about it. Oh my gosh, like, bad things are happening, panic, freak out. When in reality, a lot of these bad things that seem to be breaking in real time have always kind of existed in some form or fashion that was meant to hurt us and cause panic for us. You know, it's not new that a lot of these things are happening. It's just now it's on our radar, so we're focused on it because of the man who's in power and his Leo Mars rising self. sun in the 12th in the 10th house. All the attention is on him, so he's become now the scapegoat for things that have been going on in this country for centuries, right? The foundation of this country is everything that this man is implementing, hence why so many people are signing off on it as far as people in power, right? So there's that aspect of it. And then so systemic thing breaks, everybody panics about it, and then all of the messaging from the larger media outlets and all of these other media systems with their subliminal messaging that I was talking about. Oh, yeah. All of that keeps telling us to just stay the course, right? And Ismatu um has a visual of this on the post if you guys want to go look at it, but I'll repost it later on my mixed Mercury thing. But every time everybody panics, then these larger news networks and everybody else keep saying, hey, stay the course. It's going to be okay. Just hold tight. Don't dump your stocks. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't divest. Basically, just stay the course. It'll work itself out, and tries to get everybody to calm down, which then makes people invest even more and latch onto even more these larger systems: capitalism, whiteness, patriarchy, right? So that's where you see all of this fascist behavior coming up, all of the eugenics, all of the phobias, all of the isms, are people latching onto this system and saying, well, if we would just conform, if we would just behave the way that we've been told the world is supposed to work, everything will go back to normal. We can relax. So people cling, they invest, they become more right wing, more conservative, more fascist, thinking that it's going to save them. And then another thing breaks. And another thing breaks. People panic, insert subliminal messaging, people stay the course, latch on into the system, something else breaks, so on and so forth. We keep doing the thing that's hurting us, just like we've been doing with this pandemic for the last 5 years, 6 years, since eternity, of staying the course and latching onto the system just for something else to break. Because guess what? The function of the system is what it does. It's meant to break. And the breaking is by design, just like the planned obsolescence of everything else that we consume in the society. It's meant to break at some point so that we will reinvest in a new version of the same thing that we've been consuming all this time, because it's what we know, it's what's familiar to us. And so we never do the thing that we actually need to do as a society, which is divest from the fucking system. Instead of divesting, we keep investing. So at what point do we stop investing and staying the course and not disrupting the process and do something different? And I don't know the answer to that. It's just something that I complain about all the time, because as we said from the beginning of this thing, you have to critique things within the context that they exist in. And the context that we exist in, again, whiteness, capitalism, patriarchy. Fascism is a reaction to socialism and capitalism failing, basically. I won't even say socialism specifically, but fascism is a reaction to capitalism um, losing power, basically, losing strength, losing popularity, malfunctioning, whatever you want to call it. Fascism is the response to that. So we're watching it happen, but we can't get out of it. In the same way that we'll stay in that toxic relationship, even though you know it's going to end exactly how it's going to end, you stay in it because it's familiar, the devil you know. But how do we get out of that? And I'm not saying that these transits are going to make us have the answer at some point. It'd be nice if they did. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. If you ask the tropicals with Uranus moving into Gemini, where it's been during the last several wars, they might tell you that a revolution is coming. However, I actually really question that, because as many revolutions as we've had since 1776, what's really changed? The only thing that's really changed in my eyes is more people gaining access to the system. None of the revolutions have actually revolted against capitalism. They've reinforced capitalism and just given more people the ability to participate in it. And in some ways, it was like short-term harm reduction, absolutely. And I think that that has its place, again, in the short term of, Black people not continuing to be enslaved or uh migrants being able to stay in the country a little bit longer before being deported. But what did it ultimately fix? Nothing. It's the same. It's the same. So what is Uranus and Gemini really going to do then, as far as another war? Because we did the whole taxation without representation thing in 1776, right? Only to get back to this point today in 2025 where there's still taxation without representation. Our money is still dropping bombs on other innocent countries. And we're not signing off on that. Our money is still going towards expanding ICE and the Department of Defense and taking away from social services. So really, if we're going to revolt, what are we revolting against? Are we revolting to get another reality TV show character booted off the show so that we can enjoy watching it more without having to think about how our morals and our values are in conflict with this thing that we're consuming? Are we going to do something else? I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know how you get to the point of doing something else. Because the other thing that I said is that being anti capitalist seems like it's a lot more popular when people are actually comfortable. That's what people wanted when they wanted Kamala to get nominated. They wanted Kamala to be president so that they could continue to consume uncritically. They wanted to continue to consume uncritically, or to be able to consume critically without their actual material reality changing in any significant way. Because it would mean that a lot of us have to give a lot of shit up. I don't even think I fully comprehend and accept just how much our lives would change. As obviously in the short term would be catastrophic in the short term, but even in the long term, like, we would really have to change in ways that none of us can comprehend, And a lot of people don't want to do that. If people don't want to wear a mask whenever they know, well, they don't know. Nuance to that too. But when a lot of them have experienced almost dying from COVID, a lot of people stayed on a ventilator for however long they did. A lot of people didn't fucking make it. And people still don't want to wear a mask. People still don't want to wear a mask even in temporary situations like going to a public domain. So how are we ever going to get free? Do we want to be free? Or do we just want to be comfortable a little bit longer? I don't know. I don't know. All the flooding that's happening right now feels very Saturn and Pisces as well. Because instead of people acknowledging that we're destroying our home, Earth, and the atmosphere, they've decided that it's cloud seeding by the government. It's the weather machine. Because what would it mean to acknowledge the fact that if we want to survive on this planet a little bit longer, we have to fundamentally change the way that we live on it and that we interact with it, that we can't just escape and go to Mars. And I talked about this a long time ago with Pisces placements and maybe Saturn and Pisces specifically, but it really is that question of, if I were to accept the truth of this situation and accept that the experience that I'm having is in fact the experience that I'm having, what would that mean for the person that I would now have to become, or the person that I am? What would that mean for the ways that I need to change? What would that mean for the reality of the circumstances that I'm existing in? And does that mean I have to do something that's uncomfortable in order for things to change? Yes. Change is uncomfortable. Period. Whether it's changed for good or for bad, it's uncomfortable because it's new and it's different, and our brains really like familiarity. If you get nothing else from this conversation today and everything we're talking about with these water transits, the one thing you should always remember is that our human brains do not like change. We love predictability and familiarity. We love it. We love it. We love a consistent, unchanging pattern. And life, the only guarantee in this life and in this universe is that some shit is going to change at some point. Nothing is infinite, and everything is always changing. And 99% of our problems are that exactly. We want things to be familiar and predictable, and the world is not that. It is uncertain and unpredictable. And we're trying to adapt to that all the time. So when I talk about these things of subliminal messaging and propaganda and all of these ideas that are constantly being inserted into our minds to give us a sense of stability and familiarity and peace, we have to be skeptical of that. We have to be skeptical of things that we think the things that we take for granted in this reality, because it just might not be what it looks like or what it sounds like at face value. It exists within the context of which it came, right? Whew, child. Panic paradox. Like the loop, the same loop, because each time you get more people tuned in, repeat the reaction, minimal forward movement. Exactly. Hey, Eric. Oh, y'all said more things. Let me scroll up. Casting needs to be clear about what they aim to do and not pump fake during a season, especially whenever it's not consistent. That's also true. The question is, how the fuck do you win Love Island? That's the thing. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. You win Love Island by getting lucky. I think the original intention of the show was that the strongest and most authentic relationship is the one that makes it to the end, and it's a mix of the other people on the island seeing that, the viewers seeing that, and then the couple itself not turning their head every time some new person comes walking in. I mean, it's kind of brilliant whenever you think about it in terms of it being a social experiment. Um, because yeah, you put a whole bunch of hot people on an island, conventionally attractive people on an island, and cut them off from the rest of the world so that they have to form bonds with each other. And then you every so often either let the couples find you every so often let them choose each other, choose the person that they want to be with, or recouple and be with a different person they want to be with. And while you're doing all of that and people are trying to establish bonds, you send in bombshells every so often of another hottest person you've ever seen in your life come into the villa and make you question if you want to stay in the relationship or go into the new relationship. And some people can't fucking help themselves. For whatever reason, no kind of loyalty or self-control, they will go for every new person that walks in and say, "Ooh, shiny new thing," and abandon the relationship that they were in to go be in this new relationship. It's also messy because there are different challenges and different like performative things where you can stir things up, or the viewers stir things up and people expose conversations that they're having in the villa that maybe other people haven't heard, or actions that are taken. There's just so many different, they throw in so many different things, basically testing the bond that two people have at any given moment in the show. And if you make it to the final 3 or 4 couples, then they're all deciding, and sometimes other people decide too, or America decides. I don't know. There's a bunch of decision processes that happen between the islanders and the actual viewers, where by the end of it all, the viewers get to select which relationship they think is the best relationship out of everybody. And those two people then have the option. Well, those two people then will select, um, you know, they're both handed these envelopes where one of them randomly has the $100,000 and one of them has zero. So then the final decision is that if this couple was authentic, ideally one person will decide they're going to split the money. And so then they each leave with $50,000 and they're in a relationship. Or if somebody really is a game player, which I think this has maybe only happened once or it hasn't happened, I don't know. But then one person in the couple also has the option to keep the $100,000 for themselves. So it's really kind of ridiculous. But for the most part, they usually split the money at the end. And it's a big shock if one person decides to keep the money. But that's a decision that they just make with each other. Everything else leading up to that is a combination of public opinion and Islanders' opinions. So it's fun to watch. It's very heteronormative. Like you should just know going into it. If we talk about enjoying something or consuming something within its the context that it exists in, you should know that you're mostly going to see white cishet people. Mostly see white cishet people um be pick-me's for each other. And it's all meant to be like everybody's fit, everybody's conventionally attractive, everybody like it's very much normative. And then they add in all this other drama so you can just watch conventionally attractive people ruin their reputation basically or try to maintain their reputation. And there's so many different like psychological components of the show that's like another one people were talking about, which is something else I wanted to talk about, but I've already been here too long, so I'll talk about it another time, was desirability. Desirability is a huge aspect of that show because you're watching and not realizing that you automatically assign character and intention and different values onto people who are considered conventionally attractive because it's just how we've been conditioned to like see people. And so sometimes your like mind is blown that this attractive person is behaving poorly when in reality a lot of these people are like privileged and they have a bunch of different things going for them out in the world that they kind of have this sense of entitlement that is disgusting. So to see people actually be like down to earth, and this kind of goes back to the whole thing with Sierra. I don't know if people perceived her as being down to earth or what, but I think because people are projecting onto these people so much and don't want to see, just want a reason to bring them down, have to go dig up bad stuff because it's like surely this person is not as great as they're behaving on this show. You have to like go out of their way to humble them. So all of those things play a role into it too, which is why I watch it, because I watch reality shows in general because I'm fascinated by the production and the edits of it all and the sociology of it all too. That's usually why I'm watching. I'm not usually investing in these people as people in the real world. I'm allowing myself to be entertained by the character that they're being portrayed as. And then whenever we move on, I don't think about them people anymore. I don't really care to know what they're like in real life. I don't need to know what they're like in real life. I can be done. I can either choose to be entertained and let it be entertainment, or if I decide to get any more invested, I should just expect to be disappointed because these are just regular ass people, Anyway, I'm on another tangent, but used to be charisma and the believability of the couple. Oh yeah, chemistry, cute moments, being like a married couple, and how long they've been coupled, like couples from 2 weeks onward versus recent pairs. Yes, true. Unless the recent pair is like, oh, they finally realized their feelings for each other. Now I don't know because none of the couples are particularly strong. The stronger personality versus the couple. The other thing that's fun to me about Love Island specifically is what the astrology looks like at the time that the show is going on, because it always ends up being part of the story for those who have eyes to see. Yeah. And not the US and Israel building concentration camps at the same time. Exactly. Alligator Alcatraz. People taking pictures around the sign as if it's some kind of spectacle. Freaking weird. Have you ever seen the if AI is an environmental hazard and they know that giving access to the public is part of the plan to shift the climate change responsibility bids? No, I haven't seen that. That's terrible. But I feel like they've been doing stuff like that. Like they always the greenwashing thing with like all the plastic that they produce, and that's literally the only thing they give us to consume, and so then they blame us by saying we need to recycle. Same thing, same play. Don't fall for it. We can recycle all day long, but if everything in the store is packaged in plastic, like what am I supposed to do about that? And then they don't even and then the recycling part itself is not even they don't even really be recycling the things that we try to recycle. Like all of that shit reactions to something that needs to change at the root. Stop producing things in plastic. But it's so lucrative for the oil and gas companies that why would they ever stop until we run out of oil and gas, and then they'll just find something else to exploit. Like gotta rip that thing out at the root, right? Something you said reminded me of those videos. Like, yes, these companies are more concerned with immense profit to build bunkers while the rest of us suffer on purpose. Exactly. Yeah, just talking about the panic paradox and the control that the wealthy elites, if you will, have over all of us whenever it comes to this whole cardinal theme of consumer and labor and consumerism and such. It just feels very cardinal Cancer transit stuff to me, and especially the way that it directly relates to the environment and Earth trying to regulate itself against all of our harms. So I was wondering if money was involved. And money is always involved. Always. Ciao. Okay. It's almost been 2 hours. I need to go have lunch. So um I just wanted to say thank you guys for hanging out with me every Sunday and in general over the years, like for hanging out with me and listening to me yap and just like having this space for me to think out loud and just coming to bear witness to that. I just feel like it's so special to me, and um I feel really honored by the fact that y'all do want to hear what I have to say. I think that's really special. I don't, you know, think I'm like the smartest person who ever existed, and I don't think everything that I say is 100% the truth and the only truth, but I appreciate that y'all are just willing to hear me out and that you go on to form your own thoughts and opinions about things that I've just made you maybe think about, because that's all I really want to do is just give y'all things to think about, and hopefully we all can go and do things with this in the world, even if it's just in our personal immediate relationships, and to me that's satisfactory enough. But I just wanted to say that I appreciate y'all. I appreciate y'all for subscribing and liking the video. I appreciate y'all for reading my Patreon posts and for booking readings with me and for just being patient with me in the times that I've fucked up or said weird things or done something wrong, and you know, just for being around and growing with me. It's also been an honor and a privilege to watch you guys grow and be present, and play a part in your journeys as well, because that's obviously the most fulfilling part of doing this work in general is the personal growth that comes out of it. So yeah, just wanted to say thank you again and that I appreciate y'all, and I look forward to talking to you every week. So thanks for being here. Um, yeah, you know the drill. Books are open. Link is in the description of this video. Feel free to join my Patreon, subscribe to my channel, like the video, and check out my most recent post. I just finished doing the aspects and transits for 2026, and I posted some of the significant ones, I believe, in a free public post for my, well, I don't think it's free public. I think it's for all of my members, including free subscribers. So if y'all haven't looked at that or you want to join my Patreon for free, I do post things for free 99 every so often, and yeah, there's a post up now with 2026 transits if you're curious. Other than that, I will see y'all next week. Happy retrograding. Remember to check, double check, and triple check before you leave the house, before you send that message, before you mail that item, before you go on that trip, and try your best not to move on impulse. If any more downloads come up over the week, about these retrogrades. Obviously, we'll talk about it next week. So until then, I will see you all next time. Bye.